right, next up, we're going to be talking about nutrient timing. And this is really critical for high-level athletes because sometimes the right type of food, but at the wrong time, really can make a big difference. So the first thing I wanted to do was step back a little bit and just talk about how do we read a nutrition label, because there's some math and some calculations that I want you to be able to do on the fly so that you can do this easily if you're at a game, after school, whatever it may be. So if you can note, this is like standard on all products. The important thing to be aware of is this serving size. So sometimes when you look at the amount of calories that are in something, you don't realize that it's saying, well, this is one serving, but there's 4 servings in the entire container. So for example, if you were to have 2 servings of this, it would be 560 calories, so 2 cups. Whereas sometimes you're thinking the whole product has just the 280 calories. And this is going to be important because we are going to be looking at the different levels of macros that are in each of the different products. So in this particular product, there's 34 grams of carbohydrate in one serving. And then here there's 15 grams of protein. And then this percentage here just talks about the daily percent of daily value that you should be getting. So, this is saying that the 34 grams of carbohydrates are about 12% of your daily value that you need to get. This is going to be a little bit different for higher level athletes than it is going to be for your regular population. So just keep that in mind. But looking to see that the different macromolecules that are in here, so fat, protein, carbohydrate, and protein, but also keeping in mind that the serving size makes a big difference, because if you have 2 servings, then you need to multiply this number by 2. All right, how do I calculate my weight in kilograms? So that's another thing that is really important because a lot of the math is done in kilograms. It's just much easier math. But here in the US, we use pounds, and so not everybody knows how to do that. So it's pretty simple. What you're going to do is take your weight in pounds, divide it by 2.2, and that's going to give you your kilograms. So in this example, 165-pound person divided by 2.2 is going to be 75 kilo. Because when we make recommendations for how much carbohydrate you need or how much protein you need, we really need to know what it is in kilograms, because that's where the math works out quite nicely. The next thing I wanted to talk about was timing in regards to carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all of the different kind of aspects of your competition. So pre-exercise, during exercise, and then post-exercise. So really the focus is on carbohydrate intake the days before your competition. That's really important. Carbohydrate loading, they talk about pasta, that type of thing. That is real, and that is very scientifically accurate. So that can dramatically increase the amount of fuel that's stored that your body can later use during performance. So usually you want to up that carbohydrate intake 1 to 2 days prior to competition. It can be a little difficult if you are having multiple games or sessions during the week. But for example, if you have a big tournament or you have a big swim meet coming up, the 2 or 3 days beforehand is really where you want to increase your carbohydrate intake. Now, generally what I will do is increase an athlete's carb intake over the 2 to 3 days prior, and then make sure that they have a good high carb meal for their pregame meal. So a little bit of math behind that is basically you want to shoot for about 10 grams per kilo of body weight to replenish stores within a 24-hour period. So over a day's time, you want to shoot for getting about 10 grams per every kilogram of body weight. And I use that loading protocol that I'll use is for 3 days prior to a big competition. But it has been clearly shown that if you do that, you will increase the amount of fuel in the fuel tank that then can be used during competition. So I gave an example here of an 80 kilo person, that's about 176 pounds. And so if you use that 7 to 10, we'll just use the 10, that's 800 grams of carbohydrates for the entire day is really what they want for a loading dose of carbohydrate. So just to give a reference point, 150 carbohydrates in one of those boxes of mac and cheese that you might get from the store. So you can kind of use that as a reference point. During exercise, it's a little bit different because you don't want to overdo things during exercise. And I think there's a few things to keep in mind. If your competition is going to be a short amount of time, then carbo loading might not be all that useful for you. Because once you store all of those carbs in that gas tank, you need about 60 to 90 minutes of high level activity for that all to be burned off. Well, if you know your activity is only going to be 30 minutes or 60 minutes, it may not be beneficial for you to continually taking carbohydrate during exercise. But if the session is supposed to be 60, 90, 120 minutes, so 1 to 2 hours, then you do want to consider adding carbohydrate throughout the exercise bout because you may hit a point where you don't have enough fuel left in the fuel tank. So I can think about this like a soccer game. You might go 90 minutes, you may go into overtime. Well, waiting until overtime to try to get your carbohydrate intake up during competition is going to be too late. The other key factor is the body has to digest with you what you eat. So if you don't anticipate a competition going longer than 60 to 90 minutes and you wait to replenish, you're not going to have enough time because the body's not going to be able to get that fuel in to where it can be metabolized or used by the muscle. So you want to be doing little bits throughout the game or competition or workout session with the anticipation that your body's going to be able to use that as the time goes on. So you really want to plan ahead. You want to replenish as you go. So generally, I'll say every 15 to 30 minutes. You can get it from liquid, so like a sports drink that has some carbohydrates. The most important factor that you need to know is that it doesn't really have to do with how big you are in this scenario or how much you weigh so much, because your intestine can only absorb so much so fast. So if you're doing all of these extra carbohydrates during exercise, it really won't make too much of a difference because the body can only absorb so many grams of carbohydrates. So generally it's about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates in an hour. So doing any more than that really won't help you or give you an advantage. So let me make that a little bit more clear. So ideally, you want about 30 grams of carbohydrates ingested in that 1 hour's time frame. Well, have you ever wondered why they bring oranges to soccer when you're younger? The reason is exactly this. It's easily portable, it's tasty, and it has the amount of carbohydrates that you would want in it to get you the end result. So you may see on TV where college athletes are taking gummy bears or fruit snacks or applesauce packets. All of those things are exactly meeting what I'm telling you right now. So these are good examples. So an orange, an apple, pretzels, even popcorn has a little sodium on it, banana. So those are things that you can do, if you're off field, off court, that can be quite helpful. Now you can also get it from a sports drink, but you can get it through food as well. Here are the mistakes that I see people typically make. Usually they're just not eating enough calories to meet their demand. Families put a lot of emphasis on protein, even though that's not really critical for competition, but it is critical for recovery. And then they just don't have a strategic approach. So they don't have a plan of what they're going to do the couple of days before competition. They don't have a plan what they're going to do on the day of competition. They don't really know what to do in between different bouts of exercise. So all those things are really important.